The Kidnapped Bride. This is a love story that was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review for print in a newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All the characters in this book are fictitious and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is merely coincidental. Chapter 15. The Second Invasion of the Muslim Mujahideen. Meanwhile, the friends Malwal and Olivia transform the forest into the Garden of Eden. Just as the first couple, Adam and Eve, could eat from every tree in the Garden of Paradise except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, so beloved Olivia and her lover Malwal enjoyed every fruit of their friendship except the tasting of the apple tree. They expressed their love for each other in many ways except the forbidden way. They kissed, hugged, and fell asleep in the embrace of their naked bodies. For 6 months they walked from the southeast to the southwest of Sudan. They moved from Equatoria province to Bahr al Ghazal state. They passed through many villages and towns. They avoided large cities where government forces were camped. Wherever they went, they introduced themselves to people as husband and wife. They carried their firearms with them. A year after that time, when he left the United States of America, the feet of the sad groom finally reached his old village, called Al-Tawila. He did not find any remaining huts or people living in that abandoned village. Even the crawling insectoid creatures seemed to have either perished with the villagers or migrated elsewhere. Malwal fell to his knees and wept bitterly for his family and childhood friends. He remembered his innocent days when he used to run like a young deer, chase rabbits, and catch birds. His memory takes him to his beloved friend and lost bride, Ayan. He misses her very much and longs to see her again. He does not know whether she is alive or dead. He answered this question by shedding hot tears. Olivia held him in her arms and let him scream from the terrible pain burning like hot acid inside his chest. No matter how much he cried that day, he could not relieve himself from the pain that filled his heart. His pain turned into anger, his anger into madness, and madness into revenge. Deep in his heart, Malwal swore a solemn oath that he would not rest until he avenged the innocent drops of blood that had flowed from his parents, brothers, sisters, relatives, friends, and his lost Dinka bride. Olivia felt the same feeling of anger and revenge when she saw the skeletons of the poor villagers and her boyfriend's tears. She pointed her gun at the sky and vowed revenge. "Wherever you go I will go with you, and whatever you decide to do I will do too." Malwal turned his angry face towards her and spoke through closed teeth. "I am going to Western Sudan to search for those who killed my people and most likely stole our girls and livestock. I know how to get them. A thief will always remain a thief and will return to steal again." Somehow the former rebel fighter Malwal knew that neither the northern government soldiers nor the Muslim Mujahideen nor even the southern rebels could destroy his village in such a horrific way. The few months he spent with the rebels and the fighting he had against the government army taught him what kind of evil these fighters did to their enemies. Only the Arab Muslim Janjaweed invaders killed children and the elderly and steal livestock and young women. Then they sold those girls into slavery in the north. The lovers Malwal and Olivia were unable to spend the night in the village due to their grief. They resumed their journey and headed towards the western region of Sudan called Darfur. 3 weeks later, they arrived at a village on the border between Bahr al Ghazal province and the Darfur region. The residents of that village are Southerners who always face attacks from Arab Janjaweed militiamen. Malwal and Olivia met the village chief and expressed their willingness to join his warriors in their fight against the Muslim invaders. They lied to the villagers and presented themselves as husband and wife. The Dinka chieftain became incredibly happy to have these brave, young, highly trained former rebel fighters in the warfare. He gave them food to eat and a small hut to live in. After they had eaten, Malwal and Olivia went to sleep. The lovers woke up early the next morning and left the village. From a small hill, they watched the village. They did this routine every day until one day a group of Janjaweed militias came to attack the village. Unfortunately, when the raid occurred, Malwal and Olivia were still asleep inside their hut. Never before had the Muslim invaders attacked a Dinka village at night. It seemed as if someone was spying on them and reporting Malwal and Olivia's activities. The first hut that was set on fire was the hut where the friends slept. Some Janjaweeds surrounded the hut and waited for them to come out. The two friends must choose between being burned alive inside their hut or venturing out and being shot dead. They have little time to make the right decision. In a few minutes, the small hut turned into a burning furnace. Their military training as rebels helped them choose the least risk. Malwal asked Olivia to cover for him as he went out. It was a narrow escape for him. His escape attracted the attention of the Janjaweed. They focused their efforts on shooting him. Malwal made himself visible to them so that Olivia could escape as well. Her escape is less dangerous than her boyfriend's escape. She ran around the hut and into the bush. Several bullets were fired at her, but none of them hit her. As soon as she reached a safe place, she returned to enemy fire. At the same time, Malwal began shooting at the Janjaweed. Not since the Janjaweed leader, Haj Redouane, began raiding Dinka villages has he faced such resistance as today. For 20 years he and his men attacked villages, and every year they took young women and cattle and returned to their city with these spoils. He always sells captive young Christian women to tribal leaders and other farmers as slaves and servants. Although he became an extraordinarily rich man, the evil Islamic war habit of raiding and stealing remained in his blood. He enjoys it as a hunter enjoys his game. Every year, Haj Radwan comes with his highly trained Mujahideen fighters. However, last year was an unbelievably bad year for him because he returned to his city empty-handed. The dangerous highway robber, the Hambadi man Wad Mahira bint Aboud, took the Dinka girls, cattle, and horses from them, killed 10 of his men, and made the rest of them return on foot. Nothing saddened Haj Radwan's heart more than the loss of the beautiful captive Dinka girl, Ayan, whom he wanted to keep for himself as a sex slave in his palace-like home in Al-Fashir city. He would pay half his fortune to get that beautiful and sexy African girl back. He looked for her everywhere, but did not find her. He did not know where the dangerous Hambadi man Wad Mahira had taken her or to whom he had sold her as a sex slave. So, this year Haj Radwan returned to the south to find a beautiful girl like Ayan. To achieve his goal, he hired a young Dinka boy to spy on villages for him. This same spy is the informant who directed Haj Radwan and his terrorist Muslim men the previous year to the village of Ayan, Tawila. This year, a spy saw Olivia and reported her to Haj Redouane. According to the report, she is more beautiful and larger in body than Ayan. She possesses all the sexy physical qualities any African young woman should have to ignite an unquenchable fire in a man's heart. She has highly raised breasts like spears, a big ass, and incredibly beautiful eyes. Her hair is curly and long like a horse's tail. The only flaw in Olivia, which Haj Radwan does not like, is that she lives with another man, and this reveals to him that she is not a virgin girl like Ayan. For an Arab man like him, virginity is more precious than silver and gold. The description of Olivia's beauty and sexy body made Haj Radwan attack that village. He was determined in his heart to kill her uncircumcised southern infidel Christian husband and capture her alive, whatever the cost. At this crossroads, Haj Radwan remembered the story of the famous Muslim Mujahideen commander, Khalid bin al-Walid, who heard about another Muslim leader who had the most beautiful Arab woman ever. The beautiful wife was called Layla bint al-Minhal, and her husband was known as Malik bin Nawara. Caliph Abu Bakr al-Siddiq sent Khalid to kill some Muslims who refused to recognize his caliphate after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. Many of them became apostates because they were forced by the sword to become Muslims. When Khalid's forces reached the tents of the apostates, their leaders came out and declared their allegiance to the Prophet Muhammad and their continued following of Islam. They told Khalid that they had finished praying and that the ablution water was still on their bodies. Khalid has been in a dilemma for some time. If he leaves them, he will disobey the orders of Caliph Abu Bakr and will not get a beautiful and sexy wife as a prisoner of war and his sexual slave. If he kills them, he may be accused of killing Muslims and enter hell. However, Khalid concluded that one beautiful woman with a hand reach is better than 72 beautiful virgins in heaven, or one bird in the hand is better than 100 birds in the sky. So, the lustful commander Khalid slaughtered the innocent Muslim apostates, took their leader's beautiful wife, and slept with her on the same night that he spilled her husband's blood. Therefore, Hajj Ridwan remembered the story of Khalid and ordered his men to kill the Dinka man and bring him his beautiful and sexy woman to be a sex slave with whom he could have sex without having to divorce one of his 4 wives and marry her, because she would become the queen of his right-hand possession and he would be permitted to have sex with her without an Islamic marriage. Chapter 16. Victory over the Janjaweed. The fighting between the Mujahideen Muslim invaders of Hajj Ridwan and the 2 friends Malwal and Olivia continued throughout the night. By dawn, the Janjaweed leader had lost half of his 50 men. The leader of the Arab Janjaweed understood that if he continued fighting against the infidel Christians, he might lose all the Muslim Mujahideen who came with him to invade the Dinka villages, and he might lose his life as well. So, he decided to withdraw to his temporary camp, which was located a 3-hour horse ride away. For a safe escape, he ordered 15 of his men to continue shooting at the infidel Christians and 10 men to follow behind his horse. His plan worked perfectly, and he made it across safely and escaped alive. Olivia understood the plan and wanted to inform Malwal. She stopped shooting and started crawling on her knees towards her boyfriend. Her lover concluded that his girlfriend had been shot, so he stopped shooting and began rushing to save her. During this brief ceasefire, the other 15 Muslim men jumped on their horses and fled as well. "They're running away like cowards," cried Olivia when she saw the Arab knights fleeing the battlefield. So Malwal ran to a nearby horse, jumped on its back, and chased the fleeing Janjaweed. Olivia also mounted another horse and followed behind the cowardly fleeing Arabs. While the Janjaweed were fleeing the Dinka village, Malwal managed to kill 3 of them. Olivia shot down 2 more. One of them fell to the ground when Olivia shot his horse. She is about to kill him if her lover Malwal does not stop her. "Don't kill him, sweetie, because we need him alive to guide us to where the others are," Malwal shouted. The Janjaweed man dropped his gun and surrendered himself to the 2 armed friends. When they returned him to the village, the leader decided to kill him, but the 2 lovers asked him to keep him alive because they needed him to be a guide to the other cowards who fled the battlefield. It is a tradition in the South that when a Janjaweed, government soldier or Muslim mujahid is captured, he is killed in a very painful way. He will be peeled and skinned while he is still alive. After this cruel death, his skin would be used as an umbrella to protect the Dinka Sultan from the sun's rays. The southern chieftain wants to revive this custom if the 2 friends do not beg him not to kill him because they want him to lead them to the city where Malwal's first bride Ayan was taken. The American man, Malwal, told the villagers that he had 2 wives. The Dinka Sultan himself has 22 wives at the same time. Although they are Christians, African men believe in polygamy. The number of wives depends on the person's wealth and physical and sexual ability. The Dinka chieftain became pleased with Malwal and Olivia's bravery and so agreed to their request. Before he changed his mind, the 2 friends decided to resume their journey to the western region of northern Sudan, where the Janjaweed live, the majority of whom are from the Misriya and Rizgat tribes. The 2 lovers took enough food, water, and ammunition and rode 3 horses. The captive man is chained and mounted on one of the horses and then forced to show the way. Before they left the village, they were able to find out what happened to the missing bride, Ayan, and the other Dinka girls. The captive man confessed that their leader launches annual invasions and regularly raids Dinka villages, killing men, women, and children and keeping beautiful, virgin girls. He then sold these beautiful captive girls as slaves to the residents of the Darfur and Kordofan regions. The two friends also learned from him what happened to the girl, Ayan, and the other Dinka girls. He told them about their meeting with the brave Hambadi man Wad Mahira bint Abood. The man is one of those who survived the brutal assault inflicted on Haji Ridwan's men by the dangerous Hambadi robber. But he said he did not know what happened to the kidnapped bride, Ayan, and the rest of the other southern girls after Wad Mahira forcefully took them from them. Then he warned Malwal and Olivia about the danger of that Hambadi man. The captured man said, "Even the devil is afraid to meet the dangerous bandit and his evil men." The fear in his eyes revealed to the two lovers just how dangerous the Hambadi man really was. He can shoot and kill a flying fly a mile away. He never misses his target. If you want to get to El Fasher city alive, you'd better avoid that dangerous man. We should follow the bumpy road and avoid the highway. The man continued, "Wad Mahira bint Abood attacks convoys and Janjaweed groups who are walking on the main highway." Malwal said through clenched teeth, "We are not going to the north to see the sights of El Fasher city, but we are looking for that evil Arab man who took our kidnapped Dinka girls and our livestock from your cowardly master, Haj Redwan. I'll show you where to find him, but please don't engage me in combat. I have no weapon and I am chained." The man extended his bound hands. "You're a cowardly man," Olivia shouted angrily. "You can kill old people and children and rape young women, but you cannot fight a bandit like Wad Mahira. If that evil thief man shoots us, you will be his first victim." "I'm not a cowardly man." Something fierce and proud shone in the eyes of the captive Arab man. "I am known among my Muslim people as Hassan al-Batal Wald al-Arab, the hero of the Arabs, but circumstances made me scolded by the Jamal, or the mother of a camel like you." Jamal is an insult to women and means a woman who has a pussy. Jamal means the camel that the Arab man rides in the desert, but here the word is used to refer to Olivia's private parts. In the Hadith, the Prophet Muhammad said, "A woman is like a donkey, a horse, and a camel because all of them are mounted." This means that God created them for men to ride on. They're supposed to be climbed on and fucked by their male counterparts. In street Arabic language, a woman's pussy is called Jamal. It is ironic that in English a woman's genital organs are called a pussy or a cat, and in Arabic, a woman's pussy is called a camel. These obscene and indecent words were said by the captive Arab Janjaweed man to the trigger-happy girl, Olivia, and so they prompted her to assault him and spit on his despicable face. She is about to kill him if her lover doesn't stop her. "Calm down, my dear," Malwal said, holding his angry girlfriend Olivia by the waist. "We need him alive to guide us to other Muslim invaders." Chapter 17. The trial of the adulterous imam regarding his pregnant slave girl. At the time, Maulana Abdul Razak was prosecuted for possessing a slave girl and impregnating her without marrying her. The Sudanese judicial system was in chaos. After Sudan's independence in 1956 from the British Empire, the judicial system followed a mixture of civil, criminal, and religious rulings. Criminal and civil courts use British law and some Sudanese customs and traditions to judge their cases. The civil court handles minor cases such as disputes between two neighbors, gossip, slander, and the like. This court may not issue a ruling exceeding 6 months. The Sharia court differs from the other two courts in that its rulings are believed to be divine and therefore sent down from heaven through the prophets and messengers of God. In the time of the British colonialists, the Sharia court could handle small cases such as family matters such as marriage, divorce, inheritance, or child custody. A few decades after the British left Sudan, the Sharia court began to deal with serious cases such as murder, armed robbery, adultery, apostasy, treason, and so on. Its punishments are the amputation of hands and feet in the case of theft, flogging in the case of adultery and drinking alcohol, stoning to death in the case of adultery for married couples who cheat on their husbands and wives, beheading in the case of murder and apostasy, and throwing sodomites and lesbians from high mountains or tall buildings. In the case of Imam Maulana Abdul Razak, he will be stoned to death if the Sharia court convicts him of adultery because he had other wives while committing fornication with his slave girl Ikalas. Proving adultery in Islamic law is the most difficult religious crime a court judge can ever prove. In all cases, the court accepts the testimony of 2 men or 4 women. According to the Quran, the testimony of 1 man is equivalent to the testimony of 2 women because women in Islam are believed to be deficient in religion and reason. The charge of adultery can only be proven if 4 adult Muslim men or 8 adult Muslim women saw the adulterer and the adulteress engaged in the very act of fornication and brought a thread and passed it between their bodies. If the thread cannot pass through the body of the adulteress and the fornicator, this proves that the al-mokol thread, i.e., the man's penis or dick, is inside the al-murud hole or the woman's vagina or pussy. The number of witnesses to adultery doubled in the case of Aisha, the beloved child bride of the Prophet Muhammad, and the handsome Muslim man Safwan bin al-Mu'attal. One day, Aisha was accused of committing adultery with Safwan. While the Prophet was confused about whether to divorce his beloved wife or keep her, a verse came down from heaven exonerating Aisha from adultery with Safwan. The men and women who accused her were flogged with 80 lashes, and from that day onwards the number of witnesses for adultery increased to 4 men or 8 women. The thread method was later introduced based on the decision of the second Caliph Omar bin al-Khattab. Naturally, this impossible-to-prove method became a problem for Muslim judges and scholars throughout the long history of Islam until the great Sudanese Muslim scholar of the 21st century, Dr. Hassan al-Turabi, came along. Al-Turabi, as a lawyer, was faced with a serious case in which a group of wealthy and well-known men in the city of Khartoum were caught one day in a private garden dancing with beautiful young women who were neither their wives nor their sisters or daughters. The girls were almost naked, wearing only underwear such as bikinis and bras, and the men were also naked wearing their underwear like playboys. In this case, according to Islamic law, there is no way to prove that those sexy young chicks and bad guys have committed adultery. The eminent scholar Sheikh al-Turabi pondered this genuine issue for many days, and finally, he produced a new law that he called attempting adultery, which means a man is trying to commit adultery with a woman. According to this new law, any man caught by the police while standing, walking, talking, sitting, or traveling with a woman who is not his immediate relative such as a wife, sister, or daughter should be guilty of violating this law. The punishment shall be flogging 100 lashes if the offender is unmarried, and stoning to death if he is a man married to another wife or a woman married to another husband. But in the case of the adulterous imam, the Sharia court does not need to apply the territorial law of al-Turabi or use the thread method, because the blessed Imam Abdul Razak himself admitted before 6 male witnesses that he impregnated the Dinka girl Ikhlas without marrying her. He admitted that he committed his sexual crime with his slave girl if the case was proven to be a crime of adultery. On the day of the trial, the 5 judges who had come to try the sex case arrived with a predetermined ruling. They want to hear the adulterous imam confirm the accusation and then hit him with the judgment of God. When the accused Imam Abdul Razak appeared before them, none of the 5 judges saw any tension or fear on his face. His eyes reveal that he was enjoying a good night's sleep and never worried about the trial. One of the judges shouted, "Maulana Sheikh Abdul Razak," pointing his finger at the suspect like a gun, "have you committed adultery with a woman who is not your legal wife?" The judge expected Maulana to admit his guilt so that he could immediately strike him with a sentence of stoning. The Honorable Imam was silent for a while before clearing his throat and answering the question with complete confidence. God Almighty says in His book, the Holy Quran, in Surah An-Nisa 4, verse number 3, "And if you fear that you will not be able to do justice to the orphans, then marry whoever pleases you of the women, 2, 3, or 4 wives. And if you fear that you will not be just, then 1 wife or what your right hand possesses of female slaves." Your Honor, the judge of the Sharia of Allah, before I answer your question, can you explain to the court what you understand by the meaning of this noble verse? The judge adjusted his glasses before answering, giving him time to glance at his notebook. This noble verse gives a Muslim man the right to marry 4 women at the same time. However, I understood that you already had 4 wives under your belt. The woman who bore you a daughter is not your wife. Our Lord Maulana rolled his eyes and shook his head. Blessed Judge, you did not fully explain the verse I read to you. You divided it in half and explained to the court only the first half. What do you understand by what your right hand possesses? The judge shrugged his shoulders and replied, Jawari or female slaves. What about the female slaves? Aren't they Jawari? Maulana is speaking faster now. Yes, they are. Then the Imam's voice rose. Isn't this verse permissible for us to have intercourse with them without marrying them? Before you answer my question, I would like to remind you that there is no verse in our Holy Quran or a hadith of our noble Prophet Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, that abrogates the verse I referred to. The judge put his fingers on his neck, and his face turned red. Yes, the verse gives a Muslim man the right to sleep with his female slaves without a marriage contract, but there are no slaves or Jawari women today. I did not ask you to tell me more than the meaning of the verse. Maulana's face changes color and sweat is on his forehead. Now, other voices in the courtroom are complaining. Some of the men lean their heads close together, alternately moving and shaking their heads while also discussing the conclusion. The judge frowned and continued. But do you go and arrest any beautiful woman on the street and sleep with her, and when the morality police arrest you, come here and tell the Sharia court that she is your slave or Jariya? Maulana ran his sleeve over his wet face. According to Islam, how can a Muslim man own a slave girl? If a Muslim army invades a non-Muslim country of infidels to spread the light of Islam and defeats their soldiers, they will have the right to own their women as right-hand possession or as slave girls. Judge sniffed. Any good Muslim knows this answer. The murmurs rose in the court, building to a dull roar. Another judge shouted impatiently, instead of wasting the time of the Sharia court, let Imam Abd al-Razak prove to the judges that he led a Muslim army, fought the infidels, defeated them, captured their women as slaves, slept with one of them, impregnated her, and fathered a child by her. Did you get one of the Jawari to make her pregnant and she gave birth to your child? Only then can we talk about slave girls. The second judge sat down and pursed his lips in justifiable indignation, and shouts of approval exploded in the warm courtroom. Maulana raised his hand in silence, secretly enjoying the drama of the moment. From this, I understand that the blessed judge believes that a slave girl is the only woman who got possessed through the fight of jihad for the sake of God against the infidels, which is an obligatory requirement and a duty for all Muslim men. Yes, cried the impatient judge himself. If a Muslim man has sexual intercourse with a slave girl who was given to him as a gift or a servant whom he bought with his money from the slave market, would you call that adultery? Maulana now speaks at the top of his voice, gesturing with one hand for effect. Yes, I call it adultery and it is a forbidden act, shouted the judge as he hit the table with his fist in anger. The adulterous Imam stood on his feet and waited in silence. A third judge said, otherwise, you have to convince the court that it was you who went to the jihadist war to spread Islam among the infidels Christians or Jews, or the idolatrous Hindus or Buddhists, and took possession of the Jariya woman after defeating her non-Muslim people. Lord Maulana was just waiting for this moment. He scratched behind his ear and looked at the audience in the room. What do you say about Maria the Coptic Christian, who was given as a gift by Al-Makakis, king of Egypt, as a servant or slave girl to the Prophet Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace? The 5 Islamic justices finally faced a case with which they couldn't argue. If they say that only the Prophet had the right to sleep with a slave girl given to him as a gift, then Maulana can tell them why the Prophet said that every Muslim should follow his example. There's a lot of scraping of feet, shuffling of papers, and murmurs of voices. The 5 Sharia judges looked at each other in horror. When Maulana realized that none of the court judges wanted to respond to his challenge, he continued his speech. Let us review the entire story of the Coptic Christian slave girl Maria. The Prophet's biography says that the infallible messenger of Allah slept with her without marrying her because she was his slave. When his wife, Hafsa bint Omar ibn al-Khattab, saw our honorable Prophet having sex with an Egyptian Christian slave girl, she said to him, "Are you doing this in my night and in my bed, O Messenger of God?" Of course, at first, the Prophet felt sorry for what he had done and asked Hafsa to keep the matter secret. She should not have told anyone, especially his beloved wife Aisha bint Abu Bakr. Moreover, he promised her that he would never touch his slave girl, Maria the Copt, again. What happened after that? Imam Maulana stopped and stared into the eyes of his accusers who wanted to condemn him for committing adultery with his southern Christian maid who was gifted to him as a slave. He pointed his finger at each of them and said, "Can any of the blessed judges inform the Sharia court about the Quranic verse that God revealed to the Holy Prophet in this incident?" God blamed the Holy Prophet because he did not follow what is written in the Noble Quran, said one of the 5 judges who had never spoken before and was interested in the topic of discussion. Maulana waited, still watching the faces of the other 4 judges. "O Prophet, why do you prohibit what God has made lawful for you, seeking the pleasure of your wives? And God is forgiving and merciful." Surat Al-Tahrim 66, verse 1. This is how the 5th judge, who opened his mouth for the first time, read from the Holy Quran. "May God bless you, our honorable judge," said Maulana Abdul Razak, tilting his head to the 5th judge who recited the above holy verse. This verse and other verses give every Muslim man the right to own slave girls, have sex with them, and conceive them with children without the obligation of Islamic marriage. So why was I summoned before this Sharia court when I did not commit any crime but did what our honorable Prophet did? There was complete silence in the courtroom except for a few clearings of throats. The room became completely silent as a funeral home. Then the chief judge broke the silence and said, "But slavery is illegal in Sudan." Maulana raised his handcuffed hands and said, "Who made this illegal? The British colonialists or the Book of God, the Holy Quran?" The 5 judges found themselves in a dilemma again. If they responded to the British colonialists, they would be violating the Holy Quran and the Noble Prophet's Sunnah, which are religious beliefs that are obligatory for every Muslim man and Muslima woman in every time and place. On the other hand, if they say the Holy Quran, they must prove that the verse to which the accused Imam Abdul Razak referred was abrogated by another verse from the Quran or an authentic hadith of the Prophet. In any case, the 5 Sharia court judges closed their mouths and waited, as before, for the highly religiously educated Imam at Al-Azhar University in Egypt, Maulana Abdul Razak, to answer his running question. "Of course, you guys cannot answer my question, because you people fear man more than you fear God. I know that the judicial system in Sudan still relies on British law, which is a secular law created by man and not revealed by God from the 7 heavens to his infallible prophet. Why do I refuse to follow the Book of God Almighty and the Sunnah of our infallible Prophet Muhammad? May God bless him and grant him peace. There are no verses in the Holy Quran or sacred hadiths of the Prophet that state that slavery is illegal. If one of you can point to a noble verse or a blessed hadith that forbids slavery, then I am ready to be condemned for owning a slave girl, having intercourse with her, and charging her with something forbidden or in an illegal way. And therefore I must be stoned to death as an adulterer." The noise in the courtroom started again, but the chief judge shouted, "Based on the arguments of the blessed Imam, Maulana Abdul Razak Wad al-Mahdi, the body of the Sharia court in the city of El-Fasher does not find him guilty of any crime that contradicts the Book of God, the Noble Quran, or the Sunnah of our infallible Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace." Accordingly, this Sharia court rejects the criminal case filed by the lawyer, Mr. Al-Dali Muhammad Taha, against the Imam falsely and slanderously accused of adultery, and allows Maulana Abd al-Razak to continue his legally permissible sexual relationship with his southern Christian Jaria girl, Ikhlas. Chapter 18. The Shamashas uprising in the city of El-Fasher. The public reaction to the Sharia court ruling was one of strong protests. In particular, there was a violent reaction by those called Shamashas in Sudan against the outcome of the Islamic court trial. Before we mention what they did after the unfair trial, we must clarify more about who the Shamashas are. They are not from one of the African or Arab tribes, nor are they a small segment of society, as they constitute more than 80% of the population of Sudan. The word Shamashas means the Sun People. Therefore, the correct translation of the word is people of the sun. They were given this name because they spent most of their time working under the scorching rays of the African sun. Shemashas are porters who lift heavy weights, vegetable sellers, and shoe polishers. Porters, itinerants, beggars, prostitutes, and night watchmen. In short, they are blue-collar workers. However, due to the poor economic conditions in Sudan, the list may include school teachers, factory workers, students, government employees, journalists, and small shop owners. It is common in Sudan to find someone who works as a teacher by day and a taxi driver by night. Recently, university professors have been added to the list of shamashas of low-income groups or below the poverty line due to their low salaries. The salary of a professor at the University of Khartoum in Sudan is $30, while the journalist gets $10 per month. These are the people who protested the Sharia court's decision that day. They interpreted the decision as an open license to enslave and abuse African women by Arab men. Many of the tribes living in the western region in the regions of Darfur, Kordofan, and the Nuba Mountains, where the trial took place, are Africans, the indigenous inhabitants of Sudan before the Arabs entered the country through the Islamic invasions. Despite this, the Khartoum government arbitrarily classified them as Arabs. As for the remaining tribes, such as the Rizgat, Misriya, and Baggara, they're called the Jalaba, and they claim to be Arabs even though their features are African. They are named Jalaba by Africans because they put on something like the jilbab of the Arabs. Although slavery is abolished in Sudan, it disguises itself in different forms. If slavery is openly tolerated, what can stop the Jalaba from enslaving and raping African women from Darfur, the Nuba Mountains, and South Sudan? The recent events in the western region of Sudan were revealed to the international media through the United Nations, as the Khartoum government trained the Arab tribes of the Misriya and Rizgat and provided them with lethal firearms to commit genocide crimes against poor African tribes in the Darfur region, such as the Masalit, Fur, and Zaghawa. They are known today as the Rapid Support Forces and were previously known as the Janjaweed, meaning warriors on horses or devils on horses. They are organized and well-trained Arab militias whose tribes live in Darfur. The Islamic government of Khartoum organized, trained, and provided the Janjaweed with weapons, horses, and camels for the purpose of Islamizing and Arabiizing the African tribes. Today, many Janjaweed have been brought to Khartoum and other cities in northern, eastern, and central Sudan, and their name has been changed to the Rapid Support Forces. But changing the snake's shirt will not make it any longer dangerous and venomous. They are now waging a fierce war against the Sudanese army in Khartoum, and they are plundering, raping, and enslaving women, and possessing the homes of the citizens of the triangular Sudanese capital city. According to a Human Rights Watch report, dated April 2, 2004, the National Islamic Front government in Khartoum was accused of recruiting and arming more than 20,000 Islamist militiamen, called Janjaweed, or horse-riding warriors, to carry out attacks on African civilians from Western Sudan. Their victims are mainly African tribes of the Fur, Masalit, and Zaghawa ethnic groups. Although also Muslim, are of African origin and constitute the majority of the settled population of the region. It is surprising that the Khartoum government believes that Sudan is an Arab country while more than 70% of Sudan's population are Africans. Sudan joined the Arab League in the middle of the 20th century, even though it is a black African country, and its request to join was rejected twice by Arab countries such as Lebanon, Libya, and Iraq. However, the terrorist soldiers, supported by the Islamic Front who came to power through a military coup in 1989, repeat this false claim and mislead the Sudanese that they are Arabs and Sudan belongs to the Arab nations. Some northern Nubian tribes, such as the Jawalia and the Shajia, believe that they are Arabs and were descendants of Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad. The Khartoum government's website contradicts its own beliefs in what it posts online about the population of Sudan. According to the official report, the population of Sudan consists of 52% blacks, Africans, 39% Arabs, 6% Beja from the eastern tribes of the so-called Fuzzywazi people, 2% foreigners, possibly Fulada or Nigerians, and another 1%, possibly those who were considered inferior humans or subhumans such as Para Mello. In later chapters, we will mention who Para Mello is. In order to prove to the world that Sudan is an Arab country, every African tribe must convert to Islam and become Arab. Until then, the Janjaweed will continue their ethnic cleansing and genocide in the western regions of Sudan. Perhaps the other Sudanese Jalaba tribes, which are called authentically Arabic, such as the Shakriya, the Badahin, the Kawahila, and the Rashida, may also take up arms against the African Beja tribes in the eastern region soon and wage a relentless war to Arabaize them. In any case, there is no peaceful demonstration in Sudan. When the workers, students, and employees join the strike along with the rest of the large groups of Shamashas, there will be great destruction, casualties, looting, pillage, and rape. But their demonstrations will result in a major revolution, such as the October Revolution or the April Uprising. It has happened 3 times in the modern history of Sudan that the Shamashas took to the streets and overthrew 3 bad governments: the Aboud government in 1964, the Numeri government in 1983, and the Omar al-Bashir government in 2019. Chapter 19. Encounter with Highway Robbers. Meanwhile, Malwal, Olivia, and their captive Arab guide arrived at the outskirts of El Fasher city after 5 days of continuous travel on their horses. According to the restrained guide, the dangerous Hambadi man Wad Mahira bint Aboud and his bandit men might attack them at any moment before they enter the city. The 2 friends decided to separate so that the armed Hambada would not attack them at the same time. Through the guide's words, they understood that Wad Mahira was a professional killer and a born criminal. They were therefore unlikely to defeat him in open combat in the semi-desert wilderness. They planned to ambush the dangerous man and his gang of bandits and force them to surrender. The beautiful and sexy southern Olivia girl will be a trap to attract the attention of Wad Mahira. She will continue riding her horse with the captive-bound Arab man, while Malwal must follow them with his horse from behind from a distance. When Wad Mahira's gang attacks Olivia and the Arab man, Malwal surprises them with his firearm and orders them to surrender. The 2 friends decided to take such a risk because they wanted the Hambadi man Wad Mahira bin Aboud to be captive alive so that he could show them where he took the kidnapped bride, Ayan, and the other captive Dinka girls. The captive Arab man does not like the plan because he is afraid of the unbeatable Sudanese hero, Wad Mahira. He knows he will be killed by the dreadful Hambadi man before he captures Olivia. All the tribes of Darfur, Kordofan, and the Nuba Mountains consider him to be like the genius Muslim leader Khalid ibn al-Walid, the only Saifullah who was not defeated in any Islamic battle. He fought with the Muslim Mujahideen against the Persian and Byzantine armies as if he were Alexander the Great. However, the 2 friends imposed their plan on the Janjaweed prisoner and made him ride his horse while handcuffed and walking in front of Olivia's horse. Wad Mahira can smell his prey from a mile away, like a hyena or a wanderer in the wilderness who saw a stray gazelle. From a distance, he saw the beautiful Olivia and the Arab man with her. He concludes that she is a southern slave who was stolen from a Dinka village. He waited patiently until his prey got close enough to attack. It was still hot and bright when Olivia saw 3 Arab men on camelbacks heading towards them at full speed. She has never seen a real camel before. The 3 men appeared to her as if they were riding moving mountains. She wondered if she would ever agree to sit on such a huge beast one day. Olivia was unable to guess which of the 3 was Wad Mahira because all of their faces were completely veiled and they wore turbans on their heads that the Arab Janjaweed called kadmul. Their guns are in their hands, pointed at them. Olivia's heart nearly jumped out of her mouth when she heard the gunshot. Before she could overcome her terror, she found her body flying through the air as if she had been shot with a slingshot or an arrow. She thought she had been shot, but when she landed on the hot sand, she knew it was her horse that had been shot by the Hambadi man. She also saw that the captive Arab man had also fallen onto the sand. Olivia quickly managed to get to her feet when she saw a camel rider approaching. Then the stuttering person passed her and headed towards the captured Janjaweed man. She heard a sound like thunder and looked up at the sky to see if the storm had arrived. The bound Arab man's screams made her redirect her attention towards him. She saw the huge camel rider flogging the handcuffed Janjaweed man with an exceptionally long whip. The captured Arab man began to run back and forth, trying in vain to avoid the blows that hit his body like sword cuts with his bound hands. With every strike, his clothes were torn and his flesh was cracked. Olivia couldn't watch anymore as blood covered his face and body. The flogging continued until the captured Janjaweed man fell to the ground. Both Olivia and the perpetrator waited for the fallen body to move, but it did not move. Then the rider mounted his large camel and sat it on the body of the fallen Arab man. Olivia closed her eyes as she saw the fallen man's body being crushed beneath the massive monster. Tears ran down her cheeks. Would she also be killed in such a brutal manner? Then Olivia covered her face with her hands to hide the tears that began to fall from her beautiful eyes like heavy rain. Suddenly, she heard a sound similar to the cry of a camel in the desert or an angry elephant in the forest. She stopped crying and revealed her beautiful face just in time to see the Hambadi man who had assaulted the captive Arab walking towards her. He holds an automatic machine gun in his left hand. She had never seen this type of weapon before. He holds a long whip in his right hand. As he approached her, Olivia began to shake and tremble like a reed. The large man uncovered his face and looked at Olivia like a hungry beast would. His eyes are red and evil. Demonic sparks flew from them. His head is as huge as a large watermelon. Olivia had never seen such a giant man before. She wondered how a camel could carry such a heavy weight without breaking its back. "Please don't kill me," Olivia pleaded for her life as the huge man's shadow blocked the sunlight from her eyes. Wad Mahira had never killed Jamal or the mother of a pussy before. His voice is rough and ugly, like that of a ghoul or an ogre. This means that he does not kill a woman with a pussy. It is only with men that he will fight, trample, and conquer. Olivia shuddered. What happened to Malwal? Why was his arrival delayed? The terrified man asked, "What is the name of your tribe?" Wad Mahira roared and Olivia cleared her dry throat and said, "Azanda." The giant stared, a leering smile on his face. The Azanda sure have pretty girls. As he uttered those lustful words, his hand reached out to her chest and grasped the golden cross that hung between her spear-like high breasts. In the wilderness, just as a dog assaults its doggy, now she knows that the monster man wants to rape her. At that critical moment, Olivia heard gunfire from deafening bullets. She took a deep breath while still crying and said, "This is my hero and my savior, Malwal."